Hello, everyone. We are live now, transmitting live. This is Aloha Aini Dao Living Conversations, 136th session. I'm with Sacred Blue Heron Women. Today we have a program that we talk about the Tao of natural breathing and grounding. And I just got a notification from YouTube. And I was like, and I was thinking, um, I got to remember the name. It just came up. Um, so the natural breathing of the Tao of natural breathing and grounding. That's what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
And you, Ingrid, talk about you make a correlation of grounding with the end of the word uiwa, which is a word for herd, but it's also for herding or growing not just people, but anything that grows, anything that lives,
Right.
which then everything grows and lives. So we're all growing together, and that's what you mean by grounding. You have a much more deeper
Well,
sense for grounding.
yeah, we're gonna cut. I'm gonna make more that clearer when we get to the part about grounding.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're gonna start with breathing.
Mhm.
So through natural breathing, we're able to support our inherent state of healthy well-beingness. We can improve the efficiency and functioning of our heart, our lungs, and all our other internal organs and systems, and we can balance our emotions, transform stress and negativity into the energy that we can use for healing, self-healing, and self-development or self-regulation. Or I am going to say self-empowerment. Right here, let's make a distinction because I'm going to be using these two terms more and more often. Self-entitlement is those of us who believe that, number one, the Christians, that Jesus is going to swoop in a white cloud and take them all to heaven after they've spent their entire life fucking up Mother Earth. Beyond that, the government will take care of everything. The people with 2-acre lawns who believe they don't ever have to grow anything because everyone else will do all their food work for them, things like that, right? That's
Mhm.
self-entitlement. Somebody else will always take care of me, so I don't have to be responsible for anything. Self-entitlement is, I know I'm capable of doing
Wow.
everything, which is
And
what
I
I've
like
had to learn on this farm. Absolutely.
that's that's a huge lesson that needs to be like told and repeated and emphasized. That
We
the
will.
entitlement.
We
I
will
love that.
from now. Yeah, from now on. So with that, with natural breathing, then we're better able to extract and absorb the energy we need for spiritual growth, our true independence, our self-empowerment, and therefore freedom. We all have poor breathing habits, and they've arisen out of our psychosomatic ignorance, our lack of organic awareness, but also of our unconscious need for this buffering mechanism to keep us from sensing and feeling the reality of our deep-rooted fears and contradictions. So, our superficial breathing that we all do ensures a very superficial experience of ourselves.
Mm.
However, once we learn to breathe naturally, for even a small percentage of the more than 15,000 breaths we take during each waking day, we'll be taking a huge step toward preventing the many physical and psychological problems that are endemic in our civilized, domesticated, progressed lives
Mhm.
that are so much better than, you know,
Natural lives.
other people's. And we are also supporting our own inner growth, the growth of awareness of what and who we really are, of our own essential beingness. So to inhale fully is to fill up ourselves with the energies of life, to be inspired.
Mhm.
To exhale fully is to empty ourselves, to open ourselves to the unknown, and to be expired. And without mastering breathing, nothing else can be mastered. We Westerners suffer from way too much ego will, strong, powerful ego will. Oh, my dad was, and the man I was dating was just same steel iron will.
Mm.
We Westerners suffer way too much from that. And so even though we have maybe gone to yoga classes or two and learned how to relax and breathe from our counselors, most of us don't realize that the letting go that is required for deep relaxation can only be achieved after long practice. So at best, the breathing practices that we have been taught simply graft new tensions onto our already established ones, which then brings about an artificially induced vitality and followed by exhaustion, and so we stop the practice. So every time we inhale, we take some 10 to the 22nd power atoms, including approximately 1 million atoms of the same air inhaled by Lao Tzu, Buddha, Jesus, and everyone else who has ever lived on this earth. And every time we exhale, we return these atoms to the atmosphere to be renewed for both present and future generations. Every time we inhale, we absorb oxygen that has been expelled into the atmosphere as a waste product. Imagine that. Oxygen is a waste product by Mother Earth's plant life. And every time we exhale, we're expelling carbon dioxide as our waste product into the atmosphere so it can be absorbed by the same plant life. Because in nature, nothing is wasted. So our breath is a link in the cosmic ecology, in the conservation, transformation, and exchange of substances in all of nature's complex metabolism. It connects our inner world with the vast outer world of Mother Earth and her atmosphere, as well as all the organic life around us through the perceptible alteration of yin and yang, of negative and positive, emptiness and filling, which is the process of breathing. So what is the relationship of your breath to your experience of yourself? And what is it to the concept of real health and well-being? To be explored for each of us internally. Because of the intimate relationship between mind and body and the many subtle yet powerful ways they influence each other, we need to have a clear mental knowledge of natural breathing and its relationship to our muscles, our emotions, and our thoughts. So, for most of us, I think this is how allergies show up for me. But for most of us, our cycle of inhalation and exhalation occurs at an average resting rate of 12 to 14 times per minute when we're awake, and about 6 to 8 when we're asleep. A baby breathes at twice these rates. And our breathing rate can change dramatically depending on what we're doing or experiencing. So the process of breathing takes place mainly in our chest cavity, the top and sides of which are bound by our ribs that slant downward and forward, and the attached muscles between the ribs and on the bottom by the dome-shaped muscular partition of the diaphragm. So inside this cavity are your heart and lungs. Your lungs are shaped kind of like pyramids, and the right lung has 3 lobes or sections, and the left has only 2 because of the heart being right there. The lungs are spongy labyrinths of sacs which, if flattened out, would cover 100 square yards. They're covered by a double layer of sac material called pleura, and they're supported by the diaphragm. They're extremely elastic and are free to move in any direction they want, except where they're attached through tubes and arteries to our trachea, our windpipe, and heart. And they have a capacity of about 5,000 milliliters, or 5 liters, or 5 quarts, just under 5 quarts, right? Yet our average breath is only about 500 milliliters. And they always hold a reserve of about 1,000 milliliters of air to keep them from deflating. And anyone who's had a chest tube knows that's the reason they have a chest tube, is because their lungs have deflated.
Okay.
So during inhalation, our rib muscles expand and elevate our ribs. Our sternum moves slightly upward and the diaphragm goes down. This expanded space creates a partial vacuum that sucks the lungs outward to the walls of the chest and down to the diaphragm, so to increase their volume while we breathe in air. And the air we breathe in is about 20% oxygen and 3% carbon dioxide. The rest is nitrogen. During exhalation, then the rib muscles relax, the sternum moves down, the diaphragm relaxes upward, and the lungs shrink back to their original size. And our exhale air is about 16% oxygen, 4% carbon dioxide, and it's saturated with water vapor produced by the metabolic activity of our body. So as air enters our nose, particles of dust and dirt are filtered out by the hairs, and the air is warmed and humidified. And in general, air does not pass through the two passages equally at the same time. Typically, one is always more open and one is always more congested.
Mm-hmm.
This occurs because the flow of blood shifts back and forth between the two nostrils in a rhythm that takes approximately 1.5 to 2 hours.
Wow.
I didn't know that before.
I didn't either.
So then the air flows down into the cavity called the pharynx, where our mouth and nose are connected, and where swallowing and breathing are coordinated by a group of nerves called the pharyngeal plexus. And here the air is passing through our adenoids and tonsils, then past our larynx, our vocal cords, that use air to produce sound, and down into the trachea, which then divide into the bronchi that go one to each lung. And in the lungs, the bronchi divide into smaller and smaller branches, like a tree, and end in some 400 million grape-like bubble sacs called alveoli. It is in these alveoli that the great life-giving exchange between oxygen and carbon dioxide occur. So, depending on the demands of what we're doing at the moment and on our psychological state, our breaths can range from shallow to deep and emphasize one or more of the three fundamental phases of the breathing process. What are these phases? Number one is diaphragmatic. This is when our abdomen should be expanding, and then the thorax expands, and then we expand up here, or clavicular. In deep breathing, all three phases are in action. However, most of us only breathe here, only thoracically, and maybe a little bit up into here, with little experience in diaphragmatic breathing. And so we very rarely draw air into the deepest part of our lungs, which is where most of the blood waits for oxygenation. So whatever outer form our breath takes, an inner process of breathing also occurs. This process takes place in our cells, which inhale oxygen from the steady stream of hemoglobin that flows through our body in the blood, and they exhale carbon dioxide back into the bloodstream. So it is in the cells, and more particularly the mitochondria, where the inhaled oxygen helps transform the food we eat into biological energy. So we're doing inner breathing and outer breathing at the same time. Mm-hmm. The process of breathing and its relationship to the production of energy in our organisms is fundamental to our survival, so fundamental that nature has given us pretty much no control over it. Our breathing is mostly involuntary, generally controlled by the respiratory centers in our brain. Mm-hmm. It's connected to most of our sensory nerves, and so any sudden or constant stimulation can have an immediate impact on the force or speed of our breaths, or can stop it altogether. So intense beauty, for instance, can momentarily take our breath away, while pain, tension, or stress generally speeds up our breathing, reducing its depth. The respiratory center does its work based on the acid-alkaline balance of our blood, and we cannot, for the most part, alter the basic chemistry of the breathing process. We can influence it in a variety of indirect ways. And one is through the relaxation of excessive tension in our postures, movement, and actions. Tension, which involves muscular contraction, produces lactic acid and carbon dioxide as waste products. So by reducing tension, we reduce the quantity of these waste products, as well as the work that our body needs to do to counteract them. Healthy breathing involves the harmonious interplay of not just the rib muscles, abdominal muscles, and diaphragm, but also of many other muscles throughout our body. Of all the respiratory muscles, though, the most important one is the diaphragm.
Mm-hmm.
Though few of us make efficient use of this muscle, it lies at the foundation of healthy natural breathing. Shaped like a large dome, it's the floor of our chest cavity and the ceiling of our abdominal cavity. It's penetrated by our esophagus and affects our esophagus, which carries the food to our stomach, our aorta, which is the biggest blood vessel that carries blood away from our heart to the body, and the vena cava, which is the biggest vein that returns blood to the heart and various nerves, of course. Although breathing can continue if our diaphragm stops functioning, it is the rhythmical contraction and relaxation of our diaphragms that animates our breath and plays an important role in promoting physical and psychological health. When we learn to inhale fully, our diaphragm can double or even triple its range of movement, and actually then massages our stomach, liver, pancreas, intestines, and kidneys to help make them healthier. So for every additional millimeter our diaphragm expands, the volume of air in our lungs increases by 250 to 300 milliliters. And then when we learn to exhale fully, our diaphragm projects firmly up against the heart and lungs, giving these organs life support then. Unfortunately, most of us don't experience the full benefit of this muscle because the movement of it is influenced by our sympathetic nervous system, our fight or flight system. And as a result of the chronic stress, fear, and negativity we mostly tend to live in, and also it's adversely influenced by the unnecessary tension in our muscles, tendons, and ligaments, and the faulty configuration of our skeletal structure. So it's just, we're just kind of,
Okay.
right? Not really functional with the way we breathe. Our diaphragm is fixed to the inside of our lower ribs as well as to our lumbar spine. So it is influenced by the health and mobility of our spine and pelvis and their associated muscles. And these are influenced by our habitual postures, emotions, attitudes, and beliefs. One of the most adverse influences on the movement of our diaphragm is the unnecessary tension that most of us carry in our abdominal muscles and internal organs. Most of this tension is the result of our suppressed emotions and excessive negativity. And that image of the six-pack, a rock-hard abdomen, that does not contribute to a healthy diaphragm at all. In fact, it makes it very unhealthy.
Okay. You're going to tell us about that?
Because it's so contracted.
Okay.
When our belly is overly contracted, it resists the downward movement of the diaphragm. Can't get a full breath. Based on habits in which our diaphragm is unable to extend through its full range and activate and support the rhythmical movement of our abdominal muscles, organs, and tissues, there are many harmful effects on our organism, which is our body. It reduces the efficiency of our lungs and makes us take 2 to 4 times as many breaths. So the big ass tortoises, they breathe 2 times a minute and they live 130 years.
Wow.
So us with our rock hard abdomen and six-pack are only living 50 years because we're breathing 24 times a minute and faster.
Okay. Yeah.
When we take that many more breaths, it increases the energy expenditure through higher heart rate and the breath rate. It retards the venous flow, the blood flow to return to the heart, which carries metabolic waste to the kidneys and lungs to be excreted. So where does that go? Into our fat. This kind of breathing weakens and disharmonizes the functioning of almost every major system in your body. So bodybuilders, think about that. While you're getting your rock hard six-pack, you are weakening and disharmonizing the function of your body. 70% of your body's waste products are eliminated through your lungs. So if you're not breathing properly, you're a sewer. So now we're clear about how breathing works, and it's now time to deepen the awareness of our breathing patterns. And this work starts with sensing the inner atmosphere of our organism, our body, the basic emotional stance we take towards ourselves and the world. So the integration of natural breathing into our lives begins with learning how to sense ourselves more completely and accurately, to consciously occupy our bodies. 99% of us don't consciously occupy our bodies. We generally live our lives in a state of somatic amnesia, a state in which we're mostly oblivious to the rich information of sensations of our bodies. And this somatic amnesia is closely related to our emotional amnesia. The somatic amnesia is also the natural sex. The natural slow sex would wake us up out of this somatic amnesia also. So it's closely related to our emotional amnesia, which is our inability to feel emotions and attitudes that actually motivate our behavior. So even the vast majority of people involved in physical fitness, martial arts, yoga, and so on have little conscious contact with their bodies. They approach them not through an ever-deepening organic awareness, but rather through sheer willpower, memory, willfulness, coercion, and repetition. After how many times do we hear the no pain, no gain line? That tells you that's someone who's not in conscious contact with their body. Our body is a microcosm of the universe and operates under the same guiding principles of the entire universe. So not only is our body in the world is in our body. And so learning to sense ourselves impartially, we find that the rich landscape of our outer world, the rivers, the lakes, the oceans, the tides, the fields, the mountains, all have direct counterparts in our inner world. Our faulty patterns of breathing have developed over many years and are tied in closely with our self-image, our domestication, and our individual patterns of illusion, avoidance, and forgetfulness, our domestication. So correcting them is not just a matter of applying techniques, it's a matter of perceptual re-education, of learning how to experience ourselves in a new way, from an entirely new perspective. It begins with awareness and acceptance of what is, of the living reality of our psychosomatic structure, the ways in which our thoughts, words, emotions, and sensations interact with our chemistry, physiology, and psychology. And this awareness of what is cannot be brought about by force, cannot be brought about by sheer iron willpower. It depends on discovering a dimension in ourselves of inner quiet, of inner clarity, of observing ourselves without judgment, criticism, or analysis. So one of the first steps is learning how to follow our breath, to sense the movement without interfering with it or trying to change it. By perceiving our breath as it comes and goes, we discover an opening in our unconscious life that brings about a conscious expansion into the whole of ourselves. And it is only when we're aware of both our outer and inner world at the same time that we can go beyond the beliefs of our self-image and experience the real forces at work in us. Learning how to listen to the continual flow of information that our body gives us is not easy. It demands that we not live outside of our body, but in the reality of this present moment and expanding this present moment beyond the 10 seconds that most of us can only be in present moment for.
Mhm.
Self-sensing gives us a more genuine relationship with ourself and our own real needs, so thereby aiding self-empowerment. Our human brain is composed of some 100 billion neurons, each one of which touches approximately 10,000 other neurons. So 100 billion neurons by 10,000 neurons. How many neurons is that?
Too much, yeah. Too much. Way too much.
Yeah, the function of all these neurons is to connect distant parts of our organism body with one another so it can function as an integrated whole. And the majority of these neurons are associated directly or indirectly with some kind of motion. And this motion depends on information, sensory feedback, both from inside and outside our organism. Self-sensing helps create new connections between existing neurons in our brain and nervous system. And one thing, anybody that works with me, anyone that comes to the dojo is going to hear me say over and over, the neurons that fire together get wired together. And we exist in this loop of neurons, which is our habits that got wired together. Fired together, got wired together. So we need to expand that neural net.
Mhm.
And through learning how to sense ourselves, we begin to understand that it's not always stress that's the problem. It's the habitual way we respond to stress. It's our habits.
Mhm.
Through self-sensing, we begin to experience for ourselves the relationship between our emotions and our autonomic nervous system that controls our smooth muscles and glands. This system works to either excite or inhibit certain internal and external actions and secretions. As we learn how to sense the physiological effects of fear, anger, and anxiety in ourselves, we will begin to understand the sympathetic branch of our autonomic nervous system that readies our body for fight or flight action or freezing. The sympathetic nervous system acts in sympathy with our emotions, the ones related to fear, danger, and excitement.
Mhm.
So signs, I think we all know that, signs of the system being turned on are sweating, dry mouth, increased heart rate, and more. And this system's neurons are located mainly in our chest, the mid-back regions of our spine. To turn on the parasympathetic branch, the diaphragm is innervated exclusively by the parasympathetic branch,
Mm.
the vagus nerve.
Okay.
We need to know about its organization. The neurons for it are in certain cranial nerves, like the vagus nerve to our diaphragm. They're also in our low back region of our spine. Why do we think with slow sex, we need to come down to the pelvis, the sacrum?
Mm.
We're turning on the parasympathetic nervous system of our lover partner. So the key to turning on this system is our attention. So when we're stressed out, our attention is directed by our sympathetic nervous system and automatically focuses on the supposed cause, the compulsive thoughts and feelings, the unpleasant physical symptoms. As a result, our experience of ourself becomes so narrow we can't even imagine an alternative. So one of the best ways to turn on the parasympathetic is to simply close our eyes and tune into the parts of ourselves that are most comfortable. And when we locate the comfort, we enjoy it, allow it to deepen and spread through our body. Our goal is not to get rid, not to banish these so-called negative emotions, because that's not only impossible, it's undesirable. It's finding the courage to experience them fully, to open them to the transformative light of awareness and not amplify them by trying to defend ourselves against them.
Mhm.
The neurochemical energy of negative emotions can then be transformed into the pure energy of vitality, into sexual energy, erotic energy.
Mhm.
So there's three kinds of breaths in our lives. The first and most common is the balanced breath, which more is it balanced inhalation and exhalation, yin yang, parasympathetic, sympathetic.
Mhm.
nervous systems, right? This breath reflects the automatic, most unconscious equilibrium of our life. Second is the cleansing breath, which emphasizes exhalation over inhalation. And this breath sometimes takes place spontaneously, like when we let out a big sigh, focusing on the exhalation to cleanse. The energizing breath emphasizes inhalation over exhalation. And this breath sometimes takes place spontaneously as a yawn. So in working with our breath, it's important to keep it effortless effort, wu wei. Don't base our efforts on force, on willpower, but on sensitivity, and that's a skill that develops. The sensation of forced effort is the feeling of wasted movement. Our brains learn to perform best when we use the least possible effort to accomplish a given task. Let's say that again. That's not laziness. That's relaxation. That's wu wei. Our brains learn and perform best when we use the least possible effort to accomplish something. Our senses are organized to take notice of differences between two stimuli rather than the absolute intensity of one stimulus. Effortless effort is like the vigilant relaxation of a cat. No one can embody that better than a cat. That's why Dr. Viola says we need to bring our jaguar down out of the tree.
Okay.
Because the jaguar, when it's effortless effort, it sits laying on the ground, vigilantly relaxed. If it's up in the tree, it's ready to go after something.
Yeah.
So to do this, to start, a practice is to stand with your feet shoulder width apart, tuck your tailbone in, bend your knee slightly, lift the back of your head, and start sensing as many body parts as you can, starting with your feet, shifting your weight forward and backward, side to side. Notice the various muscles. Try it for 5 minutes and then stand quietly for a minute or two and follow your breathing. So now, let's move into grounding, rebuilding our relationship, letting Mother Earth build us. Uiwa? Is that it? Throughout their lives, animals move the way nature and evolution intended them to move. That's the herding. That's the uiwa. That's the I'm building you this way. And as you watch animal babies be born, you see it. You truly see it happen, right? Because quite simply, moving naturally and staying fit is a matter of survival and the ability to reproduce. So life goes on and the species doesn't disappear from the earth. So if animals maintain optimal fitness in this natural way, why should it be any different for humans? I mean, after all, is there any place in the Amazon, Julian, where there's a jaguar gym?
A jaguar what?
A jaguar gym for jaguars to go work out to be optimally fit?
The whole jungle is a huge gym.
So before we lived in the age of convenience, movement of the human body was necessary for sustaining life. Finding, capturing, and collecting food and water required all-day, lifelong frequencies of movement. Seeking and creating shelters required strength and stamina. Propagating the species required a healthy moving body for ease of copulation, gestation, and delivery. And at one point on the human timeline, movement and all its variables that we associate with physical health, endurance, strength, and mobility were necessary, absolutely necessary for survival. But as we humans transition from a migratory hunter-gathering population to living in sedentary farming communities that then evolved into our industrialized nations and now our current technology-based culture, you and I now live in a time when movement has been almost completely, entirely outsourced. A moment on our phone can secure anything we need pretty much delivered right to our door, except for in Indianola, Oklahoma. Nothing gets delivered right to your door, except for my wine. So While the abundance of food and money varies around the globe for almost all populations, the current global environment has changed in at least one way across the board. Moving is not required.
For living anymore.
Unless unless you live in the Amazon or the Andes or right, third world countries, I guess. Activities that were formerly necessary for daily living, like running, jumping, balancing, crawling, and climbing, have become rare occurrences in our lives. And that's another thing, balancing. If you watch, like I've been watching my young turkeys, even goats, even the young goats, everything they're doing is about balance. They're always finding something to balance on. She's developing in her uiwa with them. Mother Pachamama is developing that balance in them. The turkeys are always walking. They have a coop, the base of which is made by 2x4s covered with chicken wire. They're always walking that tightrope of that 2x4. Balance, 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 balance. Right? But we are now zoo humans, living in a state of movement poverty. We're bioslackers who have neglected our biological nature to such an extent that we have become alien to our bodies, starting with the need for natural movement. Most of us are stuck in a movement coma. Physical sedentariness is a biological anomaly, an artificial behavior, a culture-inflicted imprisonment, and a destructive habit.
What a word, huh?
For most modern humans, sitting, working, eating, and playing on a raised surface above the ground level occupies 90% of our time. The other 10% is spent either standing or walking short distances on flat, linear, stable, predictable surfaces. So no balance required.
Mm-hmm.
So many of us, so advanced humans, can't even use the essential natural movement that is the deep squat anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Modern fitness programs that we're all so proud of and say we're so fit that are they stem from concepts, theories, and conventions that are not derived from our many eons of natural human physical activity that is the outcome of our evolution. We have almost reached a point where people are under the impression, our young people especially, that sports and fitness systems are the origin of our movements, when it is actually our evolutionary natural movement that makes sports and fitness programs possible. So as we bring this closer to home, to us, we all started life on the ground. Think about it. Mom put us on the ground, on the floor, on a blanket.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we have stopped moving down to the ground due to our creature comforts of toilets, chairs, couches, and beds. This has stopped the communication in our bodies, our organisms, so our upper body no longer talks to the lower, and the middle part just causes pain.
Mm-hmm.
Low back pain, right? Because nothing's communicating anymore.
Mm-hmm.
What's the incidence of low back pain in our world? Pretty damn high.
Mm-hmm.
Our modern environment and culture is perfectly set up to disconnect us from the ground, Mother Earth, to keep us out of uiwa with her.
Mm-hmm.
We no longer let her hurt us, guide us, right? Evolve us. From driving to working to eating and even relaxation, we have chairs for every occasion that keep us in one single position for hours on end. While all this may be comfortable, it wreaks havoc on our bodies, making them weak, stiff, painful, and diseased.
Mm-hmm.
So mainstream normal fitness and natural movement is not the same thing at all. And again, for the vast majority of our history, we've been interacting with Pachamama in some way, Gaia, whether crawling, squatting, walking, playing, hunting, gathering, eating, or sleeping. We almost always were in close contact with her. In uiwa with her. But since the more recent invention of technologies like chairs, shoes, beds, toilets, there has been an increasing trend towards a complete disconnection from her, along with the unprecedented levels of sedentarism.
Mm-hmm.
The allure of these technologies is that they provide us with comfort, but the reliance on these artificial supports actually contributes heavily to the rapid rising rates of pain, disability, and disease we see in our society. The short-term comfort and ease we experience inevitably results in severe discomfort and difficulty in the long term. So movement on the ground is an inherent part of our natural evolution, development from birth. Fundamental ground-based movements, like rolling, sitting, squatting, and crawling, form the foundation of our overall functional capability throughout our lifetime. Ground movements are not simple movements. They're sophisticated patterns and skills that many adults are surprised to discover they need to remember how to do properly. So think about it. We evolve. Mom puts us on the ground, right? First thing we do, our eyesight is still fuzzy. We turn our head, roll our head, may lift it. That engages the upper spine, right? May see something in our fuzzy vision that over there. At the same time, we're raising a leg, finding our toes, and oh, the leg swings over and our body rolls over. Oh, we're in the prone position. Or we see something fuzzy over there and we reach for both hands with it and we roll over and we're in the prone position naturally. Now, the tendency, if I ask you to do this and say, lead with your arm and roll, you're going to want to push off with your leg. Babies don't do that. That's actually hard. I've had to teach myself how to do that.
Wow.
To not push off with a leg or arm. So these are not simple movements. Crawling. So then getting up from prone position onto all fours to crawl. The contralateral movement. You heard my voice text. It's the hardest damn thing I have done. Learning how to crawl and use the opposite knee and leg, or knee and arm, knee and hand at the same time. You would think these ground movements are not easy. So efficiently transitioning from lying or sitting on the ground to a full stand is an extremely important ability. In fact, the degree to which you can squat, come down into a deep squat, and stand back up without needing a lot of support tells me how quickly you're going to die or how long you're going to live. The more support you need, the more imminent your death from any source is going to be. Unfortunately, most of us have lost touch with this ability, especially in older age, which then causes the falls and an overall decreased quality of life. To be fit does not mean possessing a good-looking body. It means being physically ready for demanding real-world situations. So here we go. We're contacting this again. Self-entitled people expect everything from others. Self-empowered people expect everything from themselves. So forming yourself into a physically capable human being to the greatest extent you can, and spiritually, sexually at the deepest, broadest level possible is not just a lifestyle option, it's a duty to yourself, your family, your community, and your next 7 generations. What's the concept of our time? Chest out, belly in. A nation capable of taking this injunction as a general rule is in great danger, said an old Japanese sage. Chest out, belly in leads to a posture that shifts the center of gravity upward to the chest, so there is no right centering anymore. The Japanese word hara literally means belly, but it has a far deeper meaning. Hara is the vital earth center of all of us, and when we come back down to the ground, we start learning how to develop our hara. Hara means an understanding of the significance of the middle of the body as a foundation of an overall feeling for life. It's the very embodiment of our contact with the fundamental powers of the greater life manifested in us. Hara means the condition of a person in which he or she is open to the primal oneness of original life. And Hara as a practice means right earthing, or coming into Uiwa with Mother Earth, with Pachamama. The forces of nature are always working with us, mostly without our knowledge, to heal and integrate us. Being, or a Holy Mother, works unsolicited in us and in all living creatures as the divine life which wants to manifest itself in the perfection of its own creation. Hara as a practice does not generate the experience of being, but prepares the way for it, as we are learning to let the indwelling reality of being emerge. So the practice of Hara is training in posture, right tension, and breathing on the ground to achieve belly, or our right vital center. If you're standing in right posture with your center of gravity in Hara, you cannot be pushed over or backwards or forwards. And right posture can be acquired only, right Hara posture, if we do three things. 1, drop our shoulders. 2, release our lower belly. And 3, put some degree of strength then into the lower belly.
Okay.
And what matters is that everything above the navel is relaxed. So in this practice, we discover a new support for holding our body upright. This support comes from the lower trunk, the middle, back.
Mm-hmm.
The whole trunk will gain in firmness as soon as the belly is free and able to take weight from above, so the small of the back gains a new vitality, and our whole body finds itself in flexible equilibrium. So the practice of Hara is repeatedly letting go of your shoulders, get them out of your ears and down, but don't force them. Don't just let them come down naturally. Sitting with Hara can really be understood by those who ride horses well, especially bareback, because only with Hara does the flexible yet firm relaxed posture that keeps the rider balanced with control over the horse, that releases an action and non-action to which the horse willingly respond, happens. So the good rider sits erect without tension, in form without rigidity, and horse and rider then form a unity. The horse adapts itself to the rider because the rider has adapted to the horse. They feel each other from center to center. Hara in sitting, also in standing or walking, means a power of inner directedness brought about only because self-will has been eliminated, ego will, which permits the appearance of a form that has grown from within organically. We were all trained in correct natural sitting movements as we laid on Mother Earth as babies and learning to move. We children straightened our spines naturally from the small of our back by being and moving on Mother Earth. In right sitting as well as in right standing, the shoulders are relaxed with a released belly that has slight tension. So we need to learn how to sit on Mother Earth with a released belly, shoulders down, in as many possible different ways as and on the ground, not on a chair.
Mm-hmm.
And so we modern, in natural sitting, standing, and walking, Hara provides the threefold strength of the life-giving center. First, it carries, forms, and releases the body and the human. Second, it supports and gives us our inherent form. And third, it sets us free.
Mm-hmm.
We modern humans very rarely present a picture of harmonious whole held in the vital alternation between tension and relaxation. We almost constantly live in an alternation between hypertension and complete slackness. All our common relaxation exercises don't change this, because every tension represents a bent, an inclination of the living whole. In relaxation, the bent can be eased and the whole then comes into its rest position. In the harmonious whole, tension and relaxation form an organic system complementing each other simultaneously or in rhythmical alternation, because every tension bears the need for relaxation and every relaxation bears the need for tension.
Mm-hmm.
The practice of relaxation begins naturally with body relaxation. We simply fix our mind on letting go of the muscles of our arms and legs. When we can sink into resistance without resistance into our limbs, which start feeling heavier and heavier, we can become aware of a change in our whole state. When we find our earth center in Hara, the natural interaction of relaxation and tension will come into play. And with the strengthening of our earth center, Hara, we find the courage necessary for the abandonment of our little bitty ego, domesticated ego, our domesticated self, so that we can anchor ourselves where the primordial arises. And that is all three of those together.
Mm-hmm.
Is what allows us to come into Uliwa with Mother Earth and the rest of life, Pachamama and the rest of life.
So literally going into the ground and having a relationship, rebuilding your relationship with the ground.
Learning how to move on the ground again.
Right. Learning how to move, coming back to, you use some words that are sticking with me, like well, I wanted to stick with me. You said something about okay.
There you are.
My phone it said, okay, an error has been made. That's what.
And it shut you off.
Yeah, so we're about the time to close this conversation.
Yeah.
I was saying that, yeah, you said a word, biological.
Fitness.
No, the contrary. How we are become.
Oh, we're bio-slackers.
Bio-slackers. That's it. Yeah. Man. Okay, that's some very powerful things that you've left here. As as this rich library of information that is not found really anywhere or that easily, and now people have it here. And then of course this is coming from the example of putting this into practice. So and I was thinking, okay, so you're talking about breathing first, and you have this cough, right? And and I find that like an evidence that this is somehow that you're actually working on that, right? Like what we were talking about before we entered the conversation, you work on something, and then you're not just talking about things, you're actually putting them into practice, and that
Right.
shows in different ways. That has to show, that has to manifest, and people can see it, and will see it, and have to see it. And we're not used to seeing that because we're used to seeing this image of somebody that speaks about something externally but doesn't really deeply practice it, or if he does or she does, they do it to make money, right?
Right.
And then of course that means that they're not going deep enough, because when you
Right.
start going deep enough, you find that there's something way beyond money and way beyond that, and that it just doesn't make sense to be here and to continue this lifestyle of consumerism, of oh, I'll just make money and buy the things I need, because then you're gonna need to go to the gym to make exercise, because you're just getting things delivered to your door, or you're just shopping
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
for things, and you're not working for things, you're not lifting things, you're not part of life, right? Life has
Right.
been taken away from us. So that's a hard thing to come by, but
Well, so and even in farming, I move constantly. I move all day long, but it's all the same movements. It's pushing a lawnmower, it's carrying feed to the animals, it's running after goats. Now, mind you, running after goats has had me learn how to get back on my on the belly on my ground and crawl underneath barbed wire fences to follow them. Right.
Yeah.
So it does involve that, but I'm not really jumping, not doing a lot of balancing. So I've still lived in the poverty of movement. Not so much as of a bioslacker anymore, but still a poverty of movement. So this is why I'm
You have to find, and that's
I'm
something I've thought of
I'm
as well.
practicing the rolling, I'm practicing the crawling, and that is actually building really good core strength. So you think, well, crawling is easy. No, it's not. So the way you're going to do crawling with me when you come to the dojo is you're going to get on this is we're going to do everything in sequence, but you get on your hands and knees with your toes touching the floor also, so you have 6 points of contact. Then you lift yourself off your knees, so you now switch from 6 points of contact to 4, your toes and your hands. Okay, that engages your lower back, that engages your core, and you start crawling contralaterally with that. I can go 8 steps forward, and by the time I come 8 steps backward, 8 crawl steps backward, I'm feeling it in my quads. Right?
And then
You'd be amazed. That's why I'm saying these ground movements, you think it's so stupid. Right? You want me to get on the ground and crawl? It's not stupid. They're hard. They are very difficult movements, but that is how we learn to be who we are. We would not be the humans we are if we hadn't learned if Mother Earth, Pachamama, hadn't brought us into Uiwa with her learning how to evolve and grow from her, on her.
And then that's the importance of the dojos, then, because it's there's so much to do that, and so many movements that are going to reconnect us and are going to correct and fix, if you want to call it that, what has been wronged by the modern bioslacker lifestyle.
Right. And it will turn us into amazing athletes that are adaptable to any situation. And you're like, well, I don't want to be an athlete, but you're naturally an athlete. You're born an athlete. You would never learn how to walk or crawl, roll and crawl and get up on all fours if you weren't inherently a natural athlete.
Okay, so that's gonna take us to what conversation for next week?
Well, we're going to start talking about our feet. When we're at the dojo, we're going to be spending weeks on the ground, but this next week, we're going to add our feet, and we're actually going to go into our eyes. So we're going to talk about the natural movement of natural feet, not natural movement, but natural feet and natural seeing.
Natural seat?
Seeing.
Or seeing. Okay.
The art of seeing, the art of natural seeing, because this is the most invasive prosthetic device ever created by man.
Yeah.
Most orthopedic surgeons, all orthopedic surgeons, tell you to get rid of the crutch or the walker as soon as possible. But no, an ophthalmologist makes sure that you have to get worse glasses every year, more new glasses every freaking year. You're always tied to this prosthetic. Always.
Wow. That's a tough thing to hear. Yeah. Alrighty. So the art of seeing and the art of your feet and the art of seeing. How about that?
Let's go with balance, because the balance will, with the ground movements that we talked about, we're developing balance, but we're really, the rarity of someone being able to balance on one foot is pretty rare.
Okay.
So the natural balance of the feet or something like that, you can figure it out.
And the seeing as well.
Right, yeah.
Okay. The natural balance of the feet and the natural sight of seeing.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. So that's what's coming up next week. And with that being said, we are done with this transmission of about living conversations, or just I-Need living conversations. So we're done.
Yeah,
And
we're
thank you
done.
everyone for being here. And we'll see you next time. Lots of love.